Good morning, everyone. The second topic for today is the respiratory system and the changes we see in pregnancy. Pregnancy is a very special time for everyone, and as women are being pregnant later and later in their reproductive years, and the advance of medicine is making it possible for women suffering from chronic medical conditions to become pregnant. We have to learn about the major hemodynamic and respiratory challenges that are encountered during pregnancy. Some of the general changes in pregnancy which affect the physiology are airway changes, diaphragm changes, and subcostal angle changes. Most of the changes in the airway are a result of the increasing levels of estrogen, which causes airway edema, hyperemia, friability, and glandular hypersecretion. This can result in something called gestational rhinitis, which is usually seen during the last 6 weeks of gestation and recovers within 2 weeks after delivery, characterized by coughing, sneezing, epistaxis, and sometimes, in extreme cases, nasal polyposis. These symptoms are usually relieved by home remedies like warm compress application, steam inhalation, and massage. How it affects women is they tend to have preferential mouth breathing and an intolerance towards nasal devices. So NG tubes, nasal cannulas, and nasotracheal tubes, it's preferable to use a smaller size if at all they have to be used in pregnancy. The changes in the diaphragm. The diaphragm tends to move the growing the growing uterus pushes the diaphragm up by at least 4 centimeters, and this tends to increase both the AP and the transverse diameter of the thoracic outlet. The diaphragmatic function is not impaired, and respiration tends to be more diaphragmatic than costal in pregnancy. Here we see a diagram which shows the that the diaphragm has increased by at least 4 centimeters with the enlargement in the size of the uterus. Next is changes in the subcostal angle. In the pre-pregnant state, the subcostal angle tends to be about 68 degrees, but due to the effect of relaxin, there is progressive relaxation of the ligamentous attachments of the ribs. This causes the subcostal angle to increase from 68 degree to 103 degree, and therefore the thoracic cage increases by 5 to 7 centimeters in diameter. This causes a shortening and a widening of the chest cavity. So in an X-ray done in a pregnant woman, we would notice an upward and lateral displacement of the cardiac apex. Now the next part will be about the lung volumes in pregnancy and how they change. There are two factors which cause most of the changes in lung volume. The first one is the fact that the diaphragm is pushed up by at least 4 centimeter. When the diaphragm is pushed up by 4 centimeter, it causes a reduction in the expiratory reserve volume and the residual volume. Also, the transverse diameter increases by 2 centimeter. So the overall diameter increases by about 6 centimeters, and the tidal volume also increases. And because minute ventilation is a product of tidal volume and breathing rate, with the increase in tidal volume, we find that the minute ventilation also increases. This is a schematic diagram which helps us understand how these lung volumes change. This is the residual volume represented in blue and the expiratory reserve volume represented in red. Together, they contribute to the functional residual capacity. And here in green, we see the tidal volume and the inspiratory reserve volume, which together contributes to the inspiratory capacity. As the dome of the diaphragm lifts up by 4 centimeter, both the ERV and the RV decreases. So because FRC is the sum of ERV and RV, the total functional residual capacity also decreases. Here we see that the residual volume decreased and the ERV also decreased. So the functional residual capacity, which was the total of ERV and residual volume, has also decreased. Likewise, because the subcostal angle is increasing and the overall transverse diameter increases by 4 centimeters, tidal volume increases. However, inspiratory reserve volume remains normal, and inspiratory capacity is the sum of tidal volume and inspiratory reserve volume, and the total IC overall increases. Here we see the diagram again. TV tidal volume has increased, but IRV remains more or less constant. But because of the increase in tidal volume, inspiratory capacity as a whole increases. So here we have now with inspiratory capacity is increasing and the functional residual capacity is decreasing. So what happens to the total lung capacity? Inspiratory capacity increases, functional residual capacity decreases. So total lung capacity in most cases tends to remain constant in pregnancy, or if at all it has to change, it tends to decrease slightly. Some of the values that remain normal and remain unchanged throughout pregnancy are, as we saw previously, the inspiratory reserve volume. The total lung capacity usually remains normal or maybe slightly decreased. Respiratory rate remains normal. Vital capacity, diffusion capacity, pulmonary artery pressure, and FEV1 are other values that remain normal during pregnancy. Labor and delivery. Mainly the pain and anxiety which is caused due to the contraction tends to increase the oxygen consumption during labor. This causes an increased minute volume and eventually a reduced placental perfusion. In women with poor respiratory reserve, say they have poorly controlled asthma or any underlying restrictive pulmonary pathology, this increase can push them towards respiratory failure. Mainly because pain happens to be the source of all these adverse events. Adequate pain control can help to minimize these effects. But while choosing methods to reduce pain, it is better to avoid systemic opioids because they can cause respiratory depression. A targeted regional anesthesia is preferred in women. We also, let's go through the clinical significance of, a few important clinical conditions and how pregnancy changes them. One is the choice of diagnostic imaging. Risk of both oncogenicity and teratogenicity is quite marked in women who are carrying babies. However, there is no threshold for when oncogenicity can happen. The exact level of radiation to which a woman has to be exposed before she can develop malignancy has not been known. However, there is a threshold for congenital malformations and teratogenicity, which is 10 gray. A more conservative option would be to keep the values less than 5. Of all the common imaging that we use, only a CT venography tends to exceed 5. Therefore, medical care of mother takes priority over radiation risk to fetus, because as this table from Fishman shows us, most of our routine methods of evaluation are well below the level of 5. Chest radiography being the lowest, and the highest we probably use are interventional radiology for abdominal fluoroscopy and PET scans heading the higher end of the table. Also, there is the concept of using iodine in the contrast medium. Iodine actually can cross over to cross the placenta, and this can result in thyroid dysfunction. Gadolinium is usually used in non-ionizing radiation imaging, but gadolinium can also cross the placenta. While there are no clear effects about its clear answers about its effect on the growing fetus, there are some case reports showing significant mortality in some women carrying fetus. So therefore, because a clear answer is not there, it is better to use it with caution and only when benefits outweigh risks. Interventional procedures, every procedure, if at all it has to be done, then only if the we have to weigh the risk and the benefits, and do it only if the benefits that we get is more than the risk, and always it is better to perform it at a lower dose of sedation. In plural procedures, it is better to do everything under ultrasound guidance, because the diaphragm moves up, and to avoid inadvertent damage to any structures, it is better to do everything under ultrasound guidance. To avoid hypotension, better to make them lie down in the supine position in left lateral, supine or left lateral position. Smoking, it's associated with various adverse fetal outcomes. The placentas have reduced capillary volume, and the villus membrane thickness has been observed to increase in smokers. Amniocytes extracted from smokers have been found to have increased incidence of chromosomal abnormalities. can cause premature rupture of membranes, reduced fertility, delay conception, preterm labor, and also decreased birth weight. Asthma, it's the most common respiratory problem in pregnancy, and if not properly controlled, it can result in anemia, hemorrhage, and depression. Most medication that we use for asthma is safe to use in pregnancy. Oxytocin and prostaglandin E2 are also safe in pregnancy, but any other prostaglandins that we use, there is a risk of causing a bronchospasm in the mother. Last bit about venous thromboembolism. The risk of developing a venous thromboembolism is about 7 to 10 times higher in a pregnant woman than in the non-pregnant state, and 75 to 80% of venous thromboembolisms occur in the left leg. The reason it occurs in the left lower limb is because of the compression of the left iliac vein by the gravid uterus. Some of the other factors that contribute towards development of thrombosis is the stasis of blood flow because of the gravid uterus, and also venodilation due to pregnancy hormones. Hypercoagulable state, which cause changes in the coagulation cascade, making pregnancy a hypercoagulable state, and also vascular injury that usually occurs during delivery. Compression ultrasound is the preferred modality of diagnosing a venous thromboembolism. Also, if the clinical suspicion is high, no harm in going ahead with the chest X-ray. If the chest X-ray is normal, then and no abnormality is seen, but the suspicion is high, we can do a ventilation perfusion scan. Or if the chest X-ray shows gross abnormalities, then we can go ahead with the CTPA. For anticoagulation, it is safe to use both unfractionated and low molecular weight heparin. Both do not cross the placenta. However, warfarin is not usually advised because there is a well-known identity called fetal warfarin syndrome, characterized by hypoplasia of nasal cartilages in the baby, stippled epiphysis which can be seen on imaging, and various other CNS defects that occur in the baby as a result of warfarin use. Fishman also has other topics like cystic fibrosis and sleep apnea in pregnant women, which can also, but I thought this presentation mostly focuses on the physiology of physiologic changes in pregnancy.